I'm Chip Freud, and this is the Artist Spotlight, conversations with contemporary artists based on 5 simple questions that explore the artist's journey, creativity, and sources of inspiration. Welcome to another episode of the Artist Spotlight podcast. Today, I'm joined by Natasha Sochat. Natasha is a multimedia artist who draws inspiration from experiences using all of her senses. Combined with ideas and intuition, constructs objects of art. She is driven by a mission to contribute positively to life through visual art. Natasha, welcome to the show. I'm really looking forward to learning more about you and your creative journey.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I am delighted to get an opportunity to speak about art in general and about my art as well.
Excellent. To help ground our audience a little bit of what you're currently working on in your art space, as it were, please share a little bit of, maybe a current project, something you just finished, something you're going to get started on that's taking up your time and space in the art world.
I have to admit that I haven't started my newest project in terms of making visual art because my time has been taken up by opening a new artist gallery, a teaching studio in Cary, which I'm very excited about, and it's taken much more time than I expected with preparing the space, with a number, thinking about the class, and I decided I would start teaching in January, which is just around the corner. So I've been busy thinking, what do I need to teach in terms of, so I bought easels, I bought tables so that artists don't have to bring those things. And then I'm working on the supply list, etc. So that's been very exciting. And so I have to admit that that's what's been taking up most of my time currently. But I am quite looking forward to starting a new project soon.
Well, excellent. And I'm looking forward to, I haven't made a chance to get down to your new space there, but I'm looking forward to checking it out one of these days.
I'm multidisciplinary, so I work in what I call projects. So I have all different types of projects, which I've done for maybe 20 to 30 years and added to them as time progresses so that they can be very different looking because each of them says something specific or globally perhaps, but in a certain style. So that's how I work, because I could get tired of doing a certain thing. Maybe I've done it all year or I've done it for 2 years and all of a sudden, a curtain falls and I said, I need to move on. But it's not because I've abandoned that. It's because I need to recover from the intensity of working on it. I have to admit that when I was young, I used to work on 6 paintings at a time because in my oil, I do both acrylics and oils, and I love acrylic because they dry so fast. But the problem with oils is that you do some painting and then you have to wait. So that was a very natural medium for me to have 6 paintings going at once and that's because I work intuitively or work from life, directly from life. I may use photographs as a remembrance. And then when I was really, really early on, when I was trying to teach myself, I used to grid off photographs, before I had the nerve to just draw myself, trying to make it as good as possible. But so I still use a photograph from time to time, but more like a remembrance to remind me of something. And I love photography.
All right. Well, we ask each of the artists, the first question is kind of going back in the time machine, if you will. What is your earliest memory of making art of any kind?
Well, like everyone on Earth, all children naturally draw. So it's a natural thing to have, and everybody will remember their drawing as a child. But specifically for what affected me to then pursue art in a more serious manner was that around age 9, at Christmas, I received an oil painting set with small little panels. I don't know if they were 8 by 10 or they were very small, about 5 of them, and the oil paints. And I just totally gobbled that up. I mean, I think I made 5 paintings next a little bit over a week. And because I was such an avid reader, I lived in New York City at that time. And, New York City has many times you stay in your apartment. So I was such an avid reader. I've always been an avid reader that I gave me an imagination. So I really, in what I painted, the reason I could do that is because I painted directly from the imagination that I had from reading certain books. So that was my earliest memory of how I fell in love with oil painting.
Wonderful, wonderful. Do you remember any of the specific subjects of that first set?
I actually do remember. I remember 2 of them. One of them was a book that I was reading about being on an island, and there were houses on the island. So I remember painting these little houses on an island. That was one of them. That's all I remember vaguely. And then the other one was about underwater. So it was an underwater scene. So of course I had fish, and so that's all I remember.
Oh, it's neat though, to sort of still have the connections to those early endeavors of creativity. How did you come to your current combination of media? I know you're a multidisciplinary artist with, you said, acrylics and oils. What brought you to that, and why?
Well, when I say multidisciplinary, it's much more than just oil and acrylic. I actually worked as a professional photographer. One of my earliest jobs when I was around 20, 21. I taught photography. Oh God, I can't believe when you're young, you have a lot more nerve. I had enough, what's the word? Confidence in myself at that ignorant age to get a job teaching photography. And I lived in Europe, so I was teaching at McNair and Andrews bases, black and white photography because color was too complex. So I was an expert in developing black and white film and printing it to the level of that I could look at a negative and practically guess what density it needed to be printed. Obviously, I don't have that skill any longer, but it was a wonderful experience that actually fed into my love of photography and a lot of photographers that existed I used to look at Camera Magazine. That actually fed into my painting. So photography has definitely influenced my painting. In fact, I used to know when I was young a photographer named Jerry Yulesman, who before the computer age, he used to make wall-size photographs that were unbelievably the worlds that he created just by his mastery of the darkroom was fabulous. And so you should check him out. Now, of course, nowadays it's not as impressive because everybody has a computer and they can generate all those images much easier than using all those photographic techniques. But then in terms of painting, because I was doing this simultaneously with painting, those paintings during that period, I don't think I may have one painting when I was 14, and I may have one painting, maybe when I was 20 something, but most of them are destroyed. But so I started acrylic painting when I had children because I was concerned that my children would get poisoned from the oil. So that's how I segged into acrylic. And at first it was very frustrating because I tried to treat the acrylic as if it were oil and it would just dry so fast. But with time, nowadays I use each medium with respect to the medium, and depending what I want to do, I respect its characteristics and I enjoy each of the characteristics rather than be frustrated by it. I have to say that I was also influenced by I love sculpture and sculptural objects, but you can't do everything. So I make small sculptural paintings that I call retablos. And those are about, maybe like this big or really small. And those I appropriated altars, religious altars that always say something that inspired me, as well as Joseph Cornell. So a combination of Joseph Cornell's work and religious altars, I appropriated to create these retablos, which instead of being religious, they say something that I consider important, even if it's trivial, I just needed to say that. And I have to say also that I'm a printmaker. I don't know if you can see it back there. I can't point to it, but back there is a press. So with that, I can attribute to a wonderful artist named Catherine Kernan, Kernan, who is still alive, and she is a fabulous monoprinter. And I was also influenced by Michael Mazer. He's dead now, but he was in Boston, and I studied with him printmaking, as well as his master printmaker. A master printmaker may be a person who's not an artist, but they do all the prints for many artists. His name was Robert Townsend. So I also studied with him for technique in the time periods that I was doing etchings and all that stuff. But even though right now all I do is monoprints. So I'm sorry that I've answered that so complexly. So even though I am predominantly a painter, whether acrylic and oil, I also do tremendous amount of printmaking. I just have not shown anyone my printmaking, basically, because it's just too, that you have a lot of works, because, to generate a multi-color image, it may take like 6 layers, and those 6 layers may take you like 2 weeks to do for each print. Anyway.
Oh, don't worry about the complexity, because that really sort of, speaks to who you are creatively, and that you've got these multi-tendrils of ideas and conceptions of things that all inform your artwork.
Yes. Yeah, so even though nowadays I do predominantly digital photography, digital work, I don't use the darkroom any longer and its chemicals, because I also, because of my children, I get rid of my enlarger and all those things. And then I just never went back to it, because digital came along, and that's a wonderful, medium. Again, I haven't shown my photographs to anyone. Again, it's just, I keep it to myself. My children can either burn them when I'm dead or whatever.
All righty. So we've talked a bit about, the styles and medium and approaches you have to art, but what inspires your art? Where does it come from?
That's a question that I have thought about all my life, in a sense, because I think as artists, sometimes we're surprised by our insatiable need to create an art object or something that winds up, initially it's for you because you're doing it alone, but then it really want to share with other human beings. You want to somehow, beyond words and talking, be able to convey some type of message, because actually visual art is a language, as we all know. And it's not just simply, for some people, it's very simplistic. Here is, it's like reading, they read a Dick and Jane book and they're making Dick and Jane, work. But for me, I like complexity so much, the layering of meaning, that I like things to have even contradictory meanings, so that what makes a great work is that a viewer can come and look at it and be able to inject their own meaning into it, that you haven't made it into an illustration. I tell my students that the difference between an illustration and a fine work of art. Not that illustration is not a fine work. I'm not saying that, but the difference is that the illustrator wants to get his message across immediately, more than a 30-second soundbite. He wants to be read, but a fine artist doesn't want that. They want something that people can keep on coming back to and be perplexed, not perplexed to the ridiculous level that some works do just for shock and awe, not that type of perplexion. That's attention seeking, but perplexed in that it makes them think or it makes them see beauty. Because I guess I always feel that work should be beautiful, even if it's horrendous. It should be beautiful. It's like music. It really arouses our senses. It takes us somewhere else. So I would say then ideas and beauty, to share ideas and beauty with. Oh, and because of that, because I feel that art should be a positive to our public health, because I think our society needs art to help it through hard times. Life is brutal. So in a sense, art, it's good to show bad things. Some artists need to show bad things, but life itself shows you bad things all the time. So how, in my perspective, is I want to help people survive life, have something else that they can enjoy, because we have enough that is hurtful.
That's a wonderful sentiment. I also, the earlier part of that, I really resonated with me. I'm forgetting who first said it. It's not my thought claiming it, but there was an artist once said, a work of art isn't truly complete until it's viewed by a viewer. And I really love that sentiment, because, whether it's photography, painting, sculpture, what have you, the artist obviously has a message that they're creating and sending into the world with their work. But the receiver, the viewer, is just as much a part of that, because they're bringing their entire life experience to that work when they are standing in front of it.
Absolutely. I have a saying, which I've had for a few decades, that I used to say, well, the actual experience is the work of art. And that's sort of double meaning, because in a sense, as artists, while we're making the work, we're having the actual experience. But what happens is that later on, the viewer then, their actual experience of the work. And that's why work has to be seen in person. It's very distorting. Nowadays, we see tons of work all the time online, in Facebook, or whatever you have for social media. And all those works, the best works that look online are the flatness. They're flat and very graphic. So those are very successful to show. But the complexity, the beauty is really the total beauty of a work. It has to be seen in person, because it cannot in any way, manner, or form be shown online. I think most people who have not seen an original Van Gogh in person have no idea that nobody has ever painted like Van Gogh, ever. They can emulate it graphically online, but until they see those paintings, they'll realize that that's the only artist whose style I have not seen anyone being able to emulate in real life.
Yeah.
So yes, the actual experience is imperative.
So looking back over your career thus far, what advice would you give to artists just getting started?
I have a strong outlook on that. An artist who's starting out should learn everything they can to give them the tools to make work. And why do I say that? I say that because if you want to write a novel, you don't write a novel if you're illiterate. You don't write a novel if you don't know your ABCs or how to write a paragraph. So for me, it's imperative that a person get all the tools they can. They learn how to use a photograph. They learn how to draw from life. They learn to see the light and how their eyes can fool them. They learn to use your hand is your brain. So they learn how to use their hands so that they can have the facility to then express what they need to say or convey. In the beginning, you're not going to know what your art is about. That comes with wisdom. It's not a forced thing. You can't force it. Oh, what should I make my art about? No, don't worry about that. Just get your tools. And then life itself, the experience of life, will give you the wisdom of what you have to make your work about. So afterwards, after you have those skills, because you change as you live, so you don't stay in the same place. So as you change in life and you want to do different things, you'll have the tools to do that. You won't be in one little corner because you're terrified of doing something else because you won't be successful at it. A side note is that to be successful, you have to be able to fail. You have to learn from your mistakes. Yeah. A perfectionist will never attain the highest self-actualization. A person who strives for excellence, they don't mind failing. They're striving for excellence, so they can fail 100 times and they continue to grow in their self-actualization as a human being and as an artist. So that's what I tell someone who's starting out in art. Don't be afraid to fail, and actually perhaps learn how sometimes also control, not to give up control, because control will make you be stunted. Yeah, you'll get that beautiful copy of a photograph exactly as a photograph is, but you won't, because sometimes the accidents, you learn how, what life gives you, that when you're expressing yourself and something blossoms up, you have to learn how to stop there. Oh my God, look what I just did. That's better than I even thought. And you have to gather those pearls that got life. You have to learn how to take those things. Anyway.
The last of the 5 questions, and you've already sort of sprinkled throughout the conversation some wonderful suggestions here, but what other artists would you suggest people go check out?
Oh my God, well, let's see. So I want to say a few things in that. So besides the world of printmaking and the world of painting and seeing, for me, when I started out, and I also say that not only open a book about them, but go and see their work in a museum, because the work in a book is going to be a different color than the actual, believe it or not, it's going to even be a different color than the work is in person, let alone all the texture and the scale. So I think that it's in the beginning and even always, you should look at the classical artists. I'm biased. I mean, I loved John Singer Sargent. Anders Zorn is fabulous, and Joaquin Sorolla. Those are 3 that go around the same period, and those are impressionists, but they're not an impressionist the way people who don't have a broad education in art view. They always think of whenever Monet and whatever, but those guys are still impressionists because they're painting the light. In fact, the Boston painters were impressionists, and they painted the light, but they painted it in a different way than Monet, but they got information from that. So I would say to look at those people. My bias is, I think Bonnard is seeing his work in person, and after I had more knowledge in light and how to see, I think Bonnard, my opinion, is an even better painter than Monet, who has been made more famous. So I really encourage, if you can get a retrospective of his work. Oh, and then I have to say also artists that are sculptors. One of my favorite is Louise Bourgeois. I love her work. I love her spiders. In fact, I made a 6-foot spider just to do a homage to her. So Oh, and another one is Lee Bonteque. Her work is spectacular. She's a sculptor. Lee Bonteque, Bontecou. So look at those people who perhaps you haven't looked at. And as a side note, by the way, I just want to mention something else which is an amusing fact of art history, is that somebody who's very famous now, their work may be in obscurity 100 or 200 years from now. So I'm going to give an artist an example of that. Somebody who was ultimately extraordinarily famous during his time. He was his last name was Alma Tadema. I'm trying to think if I can remember his first name. Oh. But anyway, Alma, then dash Tadema. And his work was the rage and really famous. And now does anybody know his work any longer? No. So don't only be affected by who is famous. Being famous does not mean that your work is great. It just means that you had the networking and you got somebody to promote you. But so don't be, I want to tell other artists out there, don't be discouraged if you don't become famous. Continue doing your work. You believe in your work. Your work may be better than most people who are famous. So that's all. So it's worth doing.
Well, excellent. Before we wrap up here, I want to make sure that folks can come and find your work. Can you share the locations both in the physical and the virtual world where people can find your work?
Oh, well, yes, I'd like to do that. I'd love to do that, in fact. So as I said in the very beginning, I am opening a gallery in Cary on 604-B East Chatham Street. I will have my work there. But the most important thing about that also is that I'll be teaching there starting in January. I'll be teaching oil painting fundamentals. And you can sign up for that at my website for that, which is just called simplevida.com, which is SIMPLEVIDA, which in Spanish, vida is life. So it's simple life. So where they can see my work online, although again, an online seeing the work is very inadequate, but that's all we have, I guess. My websites that I have, which are predominantly, I use them as archival repositories of work. I don't have everything up there. One is natachasochat.com, natachasochat.com. And the other one is Natasha, natacha.net. So, and then of course I have an Instagram account, which it's just, I think, Natasha Sochat. Again, I guess I'm from the old school. I'm still not as active in social media as I should be, and I'm not going to defend myself. I'm not saying it's right.
No, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Yes.
Completely understand that. And for everybody listening, I'll have links in the show notes to all of Natasha's online presence, as well as to each of the recommended artists. And with that, I want to say thank you again, Natasha, for your time today and sharing your journey, a little piece of it with us. And a thank you out to the audience for your continued interest and support of this program. So again, thank you all. This concludes another episode of the Artist Spotlight Podcast. Tune in next time for another conversation with a contemporary artist. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Artist Spotlight with Chip Freund. Find accompanying blog posts at chipfreundphoto.com/blog, and you may subscribe to our show on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like listening.